Last time I walked around my bike, I managed to overheat it and split the radiator. So I've got another radiator, and I'm going to take this one off and replace it, check all the components, make sure everything's working, and get the baby back on the road. There's not actually much that holds this radiator on. Obviously the hoses keep it in position, and if you come around to the front and look up there, there's a single Allen headed screw that needs to be undone. The bottom of it, underneath, is on two hooks that go onto rubber bungs. So basically it's a question of getting the water out, undoing the hoses and stripping it off. To let the water drain out, you have to take off the filler cap, otherwise it's pressurised and it will just hang in there. So we'll just take that off, we'll come down and undo the bottom hose, which is this one here, having put a drip tray underneath it. I've disconnected all the water hoses. You can just see that one's not connected anymore. And there's two on this side, one for the filler cap, one that actually goes in the rad and one that comes out the bottom of the rad. Now I've found that if you try to pull this one off down through there, it gets stuck in the engine casing, so the best thing is to leave that where it is all loose and pull it off when you actually pull the radiator off. In order to get the radiator off, there is a screw just there. This is a special long screw, so don't lose it. That's now all loosened off, so I can get hold of the radiator and just drop it forward, and then you can see that it's connected with the electrical connector there, which needs to be undone before you can get the whole thing off. The radiator's off now. It's got a heavy old fan and it goes round. Obviously it didn't go round enough to cool the engine, so I'm going to need to check that it actually works and then check the output from the temperature switch. Just looking at it on the bike, that's all looking pretty corroded, so it's possible that it doesn't work. I've run a couple of wires from the battery so that I can put the power directly into the fan, and I realised that it didn't work, so I've taken the fan shroud off, which just pops off. And if you look inside, it's not that easy to see, but that is the commutator, and it's broken off in its housing, so this fan's shot. Now I've got an option here. I can put the bike back together without a fan, and I can just take the thermostat out and run it warm rather than hot all the time. I think I will do that for a while. I'm a fair weather biker. It doesn't go out in the cold. In all the time I've had it, which is 15 years, I think the fan has only ever come on twice. This is the replacement rad. It's from a 1989 S model, which is pretty much the same bike with a fairing. Much nicer looking bike probably. As far as I can see, they're identical, and in fact this one is in better condition. I have to bear in mind that it is really still very old. 1989 was a long time ago. I've taken the thermostat out of this and it all looks very new and good. It probably does work, so I'll keep it as a spare for now. This is the housing, and that came out of there. I've washed the thing right through with fresh water and I've cleaned the outside of it. Got as much of the dirt that was left on it from when I bought it, and we'll put it all back together and see what happens. Before I put it all back together, I've just put the thinnest smear of blue Hylamar. This stuff really needs to be as thin as possible, but it makes such a difference in keeping it sealed, and you won't have to keep messing about, hopefully. According to my Haynes manual, I need to put in 3 litres of coolant mixed at 60-40, so I've got the antifreeze and I've got a big tub of battery top-up water, because this is pure water and it won't leave any residue, and this is recommended. It's about £3 for all that, and that's more than enough. That's a 5 litre can. I can do the bike twice with that. It has to go in quite slowly, otherwise it'll kick back. Now this is the overflow pipe, which I've actually replaced with a high pressure fuel pipe. If you squeeze that, little bubbles come out. You need to let that kind of settle for a while before you put the top back on. And then we can put the tank back on and run the bike up. There is a temperature gauge on this bike. I've put one here. It's an oil temperature gauge. It's an aftermarket thing you can buy. Goes in the place where the oil filler cap would go. And usually this bike runs at 80 degrees. I can keep an eye on that, but what I found was the bike was running at 80 degrees when it split the radiator. So the temperature there is not the temperature in the radiator. I looked into getting a replacement fan for my K75, and I realised that most dealers want about 120 quid, and that's for a fan that's of the same era of mine, 1987, 1989, and it comes with a fitting kit, which is essentially some cable ties that pass through the radiator. It looks really well made, and it's actually really heavy, much heavier than I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to use this as my replacement. Right, I've now set up the circuitry so that I've got a bypass switch, and in this case I've used the heated grip switch, which I don't use anymore, which gives me 2 settings, and then I've connected that through the auxiliary power, which is this one here, and the original power source, which is there. You can see the end. I'm going to put that into the block as well, so if the temp gauge does come on, it will fire the fan. Otherwise I can just switch it on and off whenever I want. So, if I turn the ignition on, I've now got a switch here. For some reason on the low setting it does that, but on the high setting it's continuous. And that is really chucking it out. So, yeah, very pleased with that. Because this new fan is very slim, sort of half the depth of the other one, I reckon that I can get it back on without taking the radiator off. Well, it's very much touch and go as to whether that was going to get in there. It's very close. The frame has a metal shroud that it has to fit into, and it does fit into that. And it's pressed really quite hard against that clip, but it does work. That's really dragging the air through there quite magnificently. So now all I have to do is make a permanent fitting and all done. Top work. These radiators are held on with these sprung cable ties, which you need to just carefully push through from the back. And I managed to get this one through. So I just need to draw it through without damaging the radiator until it tightens itself up and get it to that point. And then there's a washer that goes on there and holds it in place. Cool. Because the fan's pushed hard up against the casings, I only need to have 2, so I've got one there and one on the other side, and that should be that job done. On the outside there's a foam pad and a retaining disc, which I think is pretty much indestructible. Then you just cut off the tail